Hey guys, Tony here. I got another deck video coming out, this time for Tokyo Revengers. This is my version of the 8 pants build. There actually be kind of two different versions that we're going to see here, but I wanted to try to get this out in time for the English release on Friday. So, we are going to start off here with a very cute card with Mikey and Draken. This is fairly simple. It's a climax swapper and the memory stopper. When you have four or more, each player ditches memory down to under, or if you have four or more, each player ditches to under four. I only run it as a one of. Climax swappers I usually run as a one of, and it's a climax swapper with another useful effect as a one of. Alright, next up we have a much more interesting card. This says when it's placed on stage from the hand, you can rearrange the top two of your deck. And then when he is reversed, you can reveal top. If it's one or higher, he runs the stock. So, as you can see, he depending on, if you want to crash him in, you can almost always guarantee an extra stock off of it. You're going to leave an open lane for a direct attack, but sometimes it's what you got to do. Otherwise, you just don't run as many level zeros. Typical coin flip, fun card, especially in this deck because your end game wants 8 stock just for the effect. So. Next up, we have another one of. This is a on-play clock swapper. Add a card from hand. Add a card, not a character. A card from clock to hand, and then ditch a card from your hand into your clock. He also runs from combat, so I'm not quite as worried about the run effect. If I was, he would be more of a one of. I mainly have this here for the clock swap ability. It's also a half decent hand filter, stuff like that. So. Next up is one of my favorite cards in the deck. This is a drop salvage, so pay one, ditch a card from hand to waiting room, and you can salvage a character. But this lights both when it's played from hand to the stage and when it goes from stage to waiting room. So since it is, basically double the normal effect, it doesn't get the normal give a character 1000 power, but it is, in my opinion, it's amazing. It's basically a double ditch out when you need it to. You can actually play it, do your drop salvage. If you have another card down, you don't have a way to pay out a climax, or you really need to hand filter, this pays down stock. It's a double hand filter if you play over it or just wait for it to die. It's a way to get 2 useful cards in hand from waiting room, etc. And since it is, in my opinion, such a good card, especially in this deck, I actually run that as a 3 of. I've considered going to 4, but I'm having trouble getting the ratios for that. Next, we have a 2 of Takemichi. This is one of those on-play effects where if your opponent has 1 or less characters in the front row, you can basically kill it. Just send it to the waiting room. It's probably be a useful card against, if your opponent is playing Mushoku and starts out with Rudy Runner, or any kind of a runner, or any kind of a huge card, stuff like that. You could just wipe it away, and they don't get their, typically they would expect a that plusing 0 to basically plus some hand, but it's not going to if you just wipe it off the board like that. But the other effect is the main reason I play this card, and I actually kind of want to try to move this up to 3 of if I can. It says that when it's played from stage, or sorry, when it's played on the stage from the hand, you can actually clock yourself from the top of your deck, and if you do, you can blind stock. So both can push you to level 1 if you want to get there, and later in the game, it's really useful if you want to both push yourself to level 3 and gain an extra stock for your end game, because your end game does have a very good chance to kill your opponents from mid to late level 2, and so there's definitely reason for you to try to push to level 3 and try to finish them off with your end game, and this can help with that. Next, we have our Brainstorm. This is a 3 of the Baji Brainstorm. It is a pants filter. Or sorry, it's not a pants filter. It is when the climax is played, you assign to one of your characters on reverse draw ditch. And so, number 1, you get a filter. Number 2, if you are playing the version of this deck that grabs events, you might be able to grab an event off the top of your deck with the draw. And then obviously, draw ditch is always a pretty good effect, both for the filter and for grabbing climaxes or whatever else off the top of your deck. The other effect is, Search Rainstorm. Fairly typical on that one. Next is our pants filter. Got a nice little shirtless Draken there for you. And our pants filter is, it's both a 500 global, and the filter is the top check up to 2 from the top of your deck, and you can add a card to your hand after ditching a card, and when you hit a pants. So personally, I love this version of the pants filter. It's just it's really tough to say if I prefer this or the one where you top check 2 and add up to 2 characters. This number, again, if you're playing the version of this deck that runs events, it can grab events. It can grab climaxes. It can grab any character that you want. This one can't fail since it's add a card from the top 2. Whereas in bad situations you can fail if you're looking at top 2 for 2 characters. But again, this is a very good card that can add anything from the top 2 cards of your deck and a 500 global. And our last level 0 is Hina, which is also our more traditional Ricky as opposed to that Takamichi that blind stocks that we saw earlier. This is, when it's played, pay 1, send the top card of your deck to your clock. If you did, you could search a level 1 or lower, add it to your hand, show it to your opponent, etc. That's fairly typical. The other effect is you can put 2 characters from your waiting room back into your deck. If you do, she gets 2k till the end of turn. So, a 3/5 beater, okay, it's cool. It can have its uses, but the good part about that effect is you can add cards to your deck that you actually want to take out of your deck. For one of the end games, for one of the level 1 combos, you're actually looking at top 4 adding up to 4 characters. So when you know your deck state, you could actually play this, put a couple more characters in your deck to increase your chances of plussing 2 or plussing 3 on that character. Other than that, obviously you can use it to put in soul triggers and stuff like that. And we are moving on to level 1. We get the foils on top. We got another 3 of this Takamichi says if you have 2 or more other trait characters, it gains 1k power. That is a continuous effect across turn. And the other effect is when the battle opponent is reversed and you have a climax in your climax zone, you can blind stock. Again, we are building stock toward our end game that costs 8 stock. And so he gives himself a bit of extra power. You know, if you got the climax in, obviously you're getting another 1k. So he is pretty good about grabbing his reverses as long as the opponent, you know, doesn't have some kind of something that can knock him off. But in my opinion, very good, very important card. The most important thing here is building that stock to make sure that you can get your level 3 or 2 level 3s or whatever out as soon as you're ready, and that you, no matter what, you can pay that 8 stock to get your end game going. And our next level 1. This is a 1/1. This is a anti-change stock bomb. And also, when he is reversed, if you have 2 or fewer cards in memory, you may send him to memory. You do not have to if you do not wish to. There are versions of this deck that do run some memory compression. And so, if you're running that version of the deck, it might be useful to you to send this to memory if you know or think you're not going to have to use it again, or if you have more than one, etc. Again, this is just a one-of for me because I don't run memory compression in the deck, and it's specifically there as the anti-change combo or counter or anti-change bomb. Sorry. Now we have our anti-change counter, which is a Mikey, but the cool thing about it is that it's a level 1 counter. So obviously he doesn't have that much power. He's only backing up 1k, but that's not the reason you're running it. The primary reason you're running it is because not only is it a level 1 backup counter, a ditch 2, but he also sends to memory. So, you know, if they're going to memory, bottom deck, stock, clock, etc., they can't encore. So I think this is a very strong card in what in BCS could be a pretty big early play / 8 standby meta. We'll see on that, but you know, if this is sent to memory, well, you know, they can't encore it at that point. So that will lead us into our last level 1. And what we're going to do here, I'm going to show both the level 1 pants combos. Our first one so I actually wanted to show the Mikey first because he is actually my favorite combo here. But it's also because I'm a huge Mikey simp. So this is actually an extremely, extremely fun combo. Not only is it a fun combo, it's also pretty memey. You know, it has a chance to miss, kind of, but what we're doing here is when he's played, you can give any one of your trait characters 1500 power for the turn. And then, this is the fun part. At the beginning of your encore step, if he does have to be in the front row. You know, you can't cheese this like Toka. But if he's in the front row, you have 5 or less hand, and all your characters are revenge trait. You can pay the cost, which is revealing a copy of himself from your hand and sending it to stock, and then sacking the climax. If you do that, you look at up to the top 4 of your deck, choose up to 4 characters, and add them to your hand. So, we'll count this down. If you top check 4 characters, okay, you're plussing 3 hand, and you are also plussing 1 to your stock. Now this has a number of good things. So, you know when you're trying to deck out with a good climax situation, you put yourself down to exactly 4 cards in your deck. Well, at the beginning of your encore step, that climax is in your climax area, you get to ditch and sack that right into your waiting room. So you don't have to worry about leaving that one card in your deck. You already have the climaxes in your waiting room ready to go. Look at those top 4, grab your characters, the rest go to waiting room, bam, you're done. And so it does have some restrictions, of course, but the restrictions aren't that bad. So, one of my favorite things is something like one of those, and maybe one of these. And then, I'm possibly gaining 6 stock and, plussing anywhere from 1 to 3 in a single turn. I'm not going to say it's broken, because it can miss. It can, not plus. It can only plus you 1, stuff like that. But for the most part, this is the most fun level 1 combo you can run in 8 pants. And it has probably the most, I'd say the most sacky potential, and the most potential for memes, and a hell of a lot of fun. Now, the other level 1 combo that people run in 8 pants is the Kazutora. So, on play, he gains X power, which is 5 times the number of your revenge characters. It's fairly typical for that kind of effect. And then the climax combo is on attack. If his pants is in the climax zone, you have another character. Ditch a card from your hand, look at the top 4, and add up to 2 characters, reveal them, put them in your hand. Fairly typical, fairly kind of recent, I guess, combo, but it's more consistent than Mikey. It gives you a better ditch out. It gives you, obviously, since you're probably doing it more than once, it gives you better mill, especially if you're trying to mill out your first deck. Mikey is much more fun because the tour tends to be a little bit more consistent. So if you're really going for the competitive side, Kazutora is probably the better choice here. So moving on to our only level 2 card. Mikey being cute and badass as usual. This is a 500 global assist, and pay 1, ditch 1, and do the My Little Shido effect. Choose your opponent's level 1 or higher character, and they have to exchange it with the character in the waiting room that is a level lower or lower. So, kind of a repeatable My Little Shido. You can do it once per turn. Pretty useful. But it's really situational, so it's only one of. Moving on to level 3. Starting with a level 3 Hina. This is your early play healer. She early plays if you have 4 or more characters on the board. Now, she is a stock healer, but not what you expect. When she is played, you can pay the cost to heal the top of your clock to stock, but her cost is not ditch 1 from hand like it usually would be. Hers is sack a card from the stage. So, one of my favorite little toys to do with her involves, where is it? This guy. So, you got 3 out, you play this one, you do your drop search if you need to. Now you got 4 on the stage. Play Hina. Here's your sack. If you need to salvage, you got the drop salvage back. She gets her heal, and then you throw something else on the board. There are a few other interesting things you can do with her, but overall, that's more or less my favorite. So it's very, very interesting effect. And you can also do it, sack your brainstorm if you're going to throw out that 2-1 Mikey in the back row instead. Okay. Instead of playing over, you sack it so you can get a heal out of it. Next up, Level 3 Draken. This card is a on-play dig X, where X is the number of your characters. So, you know, a digger is always pretty useful. Um, Looking for climaxes. If you're playing the event, one of the event decks, you can look for events, etc. And then his other effect is actually pretty useful as well. On attack, you can ditch 2 to send the top 7 cards of your deck to the waiting room and deal X to your opponent. X is the number of climaxes sent to the waiting room. So, you know, if you only need 1 or 2 to kill your opponent, or if you know that you've got really good compression and you want to try to smash them, throw this guy on the board. Get some mill, get some damage, etc. Next, we have another one of this red Shifuyu. I used to run this as a 3 of, but I'm hardly ever getting in situations where I actually wind up playing it because one of his effects is just so expensive. So he's on play, draw 2, ditch 2, and blind stock. So he basically pays for 1 stock. His other effect is pay 3 to stock flip your opponent. So he's kind of an expensive stock flip. Originally, I had him as a 2 to 3 of, thinking of him as like a cheap level 3 attacker to throw down with my Baji during the end game when I'm trying to kill the opponent. That can help because level 3 gives you might actually be able to do damage if you side in order to make sure your opponent can't counter Baji. But it was just so rare when I needed to draw 2 ditch 2, and the stock swap is so expensive. I've hardly ever used it, so I've moved it down to a 1 of tech card, and just kind of focused more on the Hina, early play healer, if I really needed, you know, basically 1 stock 2 soul beater. So, time for the end game. One of the funnest level 3 climax combos I have ever messed with. This Baji is great. I love it. So, first off, his first effect is on play, you can pay 1 to salvage climax. So, you know, he can grab his own damn pants from the waiting room. That's always fun. Now, his climax combo. This is where the deck really gets fun. So, at the end of his attack, you can pay 8 stock, ditch 3 cards from your hand, place 4 of your other characters underneath him as markers, face up, not face down, and then sack the climax. If you do, you choose. Where did it go? This Mikey. One of them from your waiting room. So, this Baji, you played him. You did all your stuff. He has 4 markers. Now, you play this Mikey into his spot. He gets Baji and all of Baji's cards, or markers, as markers. Okay, so you've done your climax combo, right? Okay, we're done here. Not really. When Mikey attacks, send all of his markers to the bottom of the deck, and you burn 1 for each marker. So, in a perfect world, you have 5 characters on the board. You're swinging with some random card over here. You're swinging with some random card over here. You swing here. You pay your 8 stock. You ditch your 3, etc., etc., etc. Get the markers. Sack the climax. Bring the Mikey out. You swing with the Mikey. Ping 1 5 times. So, If everything goes well, you're basically getting 9 instances of damage. And it's really fun, especially when your opponent doesn't know what it does and they're sitting there like, what did you say? Now, of course, the cost is steep. It's got to be steep. 9 instances of damage, 5 pings. Generally, half of those pings are going to hit. You're going to see 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5 damage off of those pings. This is a great way to end a game. It's also a great way to kill your opponent from mid to late too, if they're in a bad deck state. And the Rickies from before, you can just push yourself to level 3 and just destroy them if you know how bad their deck state is. The Mikey's second effect is when he's played, you can actually give him a marker for the waiting room. So, if you hard play him, you can still get a marker and get a burn 1 when he attacks. So, again, that is where the Hina can come into play. Basically, a 1-stock, 2-soul beater. So, if you are worried about somebody doing a tap counter or scroll or God knows what else against the Baji, if you can get it out, side with Hina, maybe 1 or 2 damage. Side with Hina, maybe 1 or 2 damage. And then now, if you're not worried about money counter or something like that, you can front with the Baji. He can't be tapped anymore. And then do his attack. Goes through. So you got 3 attacks, and then you got the 4th attack. 5 burns. It's not, I'm not going to call it high level. The deck just doesn't really have what it needs to, maybe be 8 Pants Nijigasaki. Or, of course, things like Assault Lily and stuff like that. But it's incredibly fun to play, and it does have some pretty strong effects and some pretty good finishing. So, I think that was pretty much all that I wanted to talk about on the deck. Again, the Mikey is my preferred level 1 combo, but that's mostly because it's really fun. It's kind of memey, and I'm a big Mikey simp. The Kazutora's combo, I'm not a huge fan of that combo and how it's showing up so many places, but it is pretty consistent. It gives you great mill, it gives you great ditch it or hand filtering, etc. It's really up to your play style and whether or not you play events. If you're running one of the event versions of this deck, you will definitely want to run the Kazutora instead, because he can also grab events. When you ditch 1 to look at top 4, he can add a character or event. So, there's, probably 4 or 5 different versions of this deck all over the place. Take a look around. Your play style better than anybody. Try to figure out the way you want to play it. But in the end, the main reason I play the deck is because this level 3 combo was just stupid fun. And because that Mikey is really cute. So, this has been a impromptu stream. I did not do a script or notes, so this has been pretty horrible, and I know I've done a terrible job, but I think I got all the particulars out, so you'll know more or less what most of the, tech and the level 1 and level 3 combos do for the most part in the 8 Pants decks, and you can really build yours to go tomorrow. But other than that, it's a typical, you have any questions, comments, suggestions, go ahead, throw them in the comments, let me know what you think, and other than that, if you're going to build this deck, I hope you have as much fun with it as I have. All right, that's it for today. I'll see you next time.